Welcome to fellow Cabinet members, councillors and members of the public to today's Cabinet meeting at City Hall. I will be chairing the meeting today in the absence of the Mayor. Just a reminder to everyone to observe social distancing and to wear a mask whilst moving around the room unless you are exempt from doing so. You are not required to wear a mask when speaking. As usual, the agenda papers and public forum submissions are available on the Council's website. Agenda item 27, the discretionary award element of the DHSC Adult Social Care Infection Control and Testing Fund Round 3 and the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Fund, snappily titled, is included under APR 15 as a general exception because although it was published with the other papers, it was not listed on the forward plan as a key decision 28 days prior to this meeting. I can confirm that the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Management Board and the relevant Scrutiny Commission have been notified of this. Agenda item 15 contains an exempt appendix with commercially sensitive information, and any discussion on the content of this appendix will need to be held in exempt session. Cabinet members have all been given access to this appendix. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Can I please draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure, which is outlined on the agenda and is currently being displayed on the screen. Thank you. Also to remind you that the meeting is being webcast, and so please speak into the microphone to ensure you are clearly heard. Agenda item 2, public forum. It's just a reminder that statements and questions will be taken at the time the relevant agenda item is discussed. I will reply to questions or ask the relevant Cabinet member to respond. Agenda item 3, apologies for absence. I only have Mayor Marvin Rees. Tom and Nicola are both on their way and just been slightly delayed. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be declared by any Cabinet members? No? Great. Agenda item 5, matters referred for consideration by scrutiny or full council. There are none on this occasion. Agenda item 6, reports from scrutiny commissions. There is a report from the Overview Scrutiny and Management Board on the Clean Air Zone, which will be presented by Councillor Tony Dyer. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you very much, Craig. I won't go through the entire report because you've got a printed version, you'll be happy to know. I just want to highlight a few things, which was, I'll sit down because unfortunately my back's given away. We were aware that when we were looking at the CAS that we were working to very tight timescales. So we were aware that not all the information was going to be available. And obviously we would be very keen to continue to be kept informed as further information becomes available. There were a general degree of interest in the various measures that was obviously being introduced. A couple of things I wanted to highlight that weren't in the written report, which is about whether smart choices, which was a bespoke way of encouraging people to look at alternative choices in terms of the type of travel they used, would be available. Also about how, because we are somewhat restricted by the government agreement, is how any changes will be managed if we have to report back to them on those. And also in terms of the legal compliance of wheats and air quality and how that relates to the long-term need to deliver behaviour change. But apart from that, I think that sums up, along with the report, what Osm discussed.
Brilliant, thanks, Tony. Thank you for that. I hope your back gets better. Agenda item 7, Chair's business. I would just like to take a moment to encourage everyone to respond to our consultation on the budget. The financial pressures we're facing as a city are significantly linked to the pandemic and increasing social care costs. However, as a local authority, we are not alone in this position. The last year and a half has seen councils across the country come under great financial pressure to deliver valued services. So we're keen to hear from as many people as possible to help us find additional ways to save money, including through working more efficiently and looking for ways to generate more income. Your voices are an essential part of that to ensure we can make these savings but continue to deliver high quality services for everyone. We're working on bringing back the budget simulator tool so we can all see the challenge of balancing our budget whilst facing increasing demand. The budget consultation is open until Friday the 17th and can be completed on Bristol City Council's website. Next up, agenda item 8, future energy supply. This item has been withdrawn from the agenda. Oh yeah, sorry. Tom and Nicola, you were late to the meeting. Just to check, you have no interests to declare. We did. Oh, go on, Tom. Yeah.
I'll need to leave for the ICS item like a previous cabinet meeting because I work for an organisation that's funded by the ICS system.
Thanks, Tom. And I assume, Nicola, yours was a no? Thanks. Agenda item 9, Clean Air Zone project update. I will introduce this report and take the decision on behalf of the Mayor today. We have reached agreement with the government on a full business case for the introduction of the Clean Air Zone in summer 2022. The Clean Air Zone has always been a blunt instrument and only plays one part of our clean air plan for Bristol. The Mayor has always said that a Clean Air Zone must not detrimentally impact the finance of those on low incomes or businesses that have already had a difficult time during the pandemic. By getting our modelling right and taking our time in the negotiations with government, we have secured the best deal for Bristol. With £42 million available for people to get cleaner vehicles or switch their mode of transport. We have also been able to raise the low-income exemption rate for people travelling to work in the zone from 24,000 to 27,000, giving the lowest paid until December 2022 to upgrade their vehicles or change their travel patterns. During these negotiations, we have always worked to ensure that the compliance date comes forward and have been successful in ensuring compliance will now be reached by the end of 2023. Although 3/4 of Bristol's vehicles are already compliant, I would urge everyone to check if their vehicle is already compliant on the website, bristol.gov.uk/clean air zone. Grants and loans will be available and will prioritise those who live in the zone as well as small and medium enterprises. We have already allocated £2 million to bus operators to ensure full compliance. We are grateful to operators like First Bus who are going further and working towards zero tailpipe emissions for Bristol. Charges for non-compliant vehicles in the zone will pay £9 a day for private vehicles and £100 for commercial vehicles and HGVs. Clean air has a real impact on the health of our citizens, and this Clean Air Zone is a step towards our wider clean air plan, which will include steps to obtain powers to tackle wood burners and open fires, as well as non-mobile machinery. I am delighted we've secured so much financial support. Despite political criticisms about delay, I'm delighted that we've brought forward compliance and we have maintained our promise to ensure the most vulnerable citizens are supported in the transition. On the basis of the above, I am happy to recommend this to Cabinet. We'll now take the public forum statement and questions. We've received 2 public forum statements and 6 questions on the item. The first statement is from David Redwell, who is representing Bristol Disability Equalities Forum and South West Transport Network. Welcome, David. You've got 1 minute to make your statement. Yeah. Have you not got a microphone?
Thanks very much. Yes, I mean, the points I want to raise really are obviously still about the issues of the buses. I mean, you mentioned First Group's fleet is fully adapted, that's correct, but we now have Stagecoach in the city running 1/4 of the services. Today they've been taken over by National Express Group in the last 2 hours, but nevertheless those vehicles need to be compliant. They run with a lot of contracted services for the West Midlands Combined Authority, and obviously disabled people need access to services and jobs, etc., including the hospitals, and not all those buses are on my first, some on the Stagecoach. So we really, really would ask you to talk to the Metro Mayor and to talk to Stagecoach PLC based in, and it's Rachel, and I think Rachel's second name, the MD, in Gloucester, to have a conversation about making sure their fleet is compliant. I don't feel comfortable about having one large multinational transport company funded by the government, another one not necessarily fully compliant. So we really must work on that. The other 2 points I want to raise, really, we welcome the taxi exemption. Obviously, it's the air around the hospital.
10 seconds left, David.
And then finally to say, really, is we need to look at coaches and make sure we're not charging every coach that comes into the city on National Express or Megabus, or they're not being charged to come and drop off in the city, and that's very important for the tourism economy and for access to the city centre. We don't want them dropping off at UWE coach station. Thank you.
Thank you, David, as always. The next public forum statement we had was from Councillor David Wilcox, but I don't think he's here.
Sends his apologies.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, well then, I think it's back to you then, David, to ask your 2 questions. Can you use the microphone, David? Sorry.
My question goes back to the points I made in the statement, really. It's about making sure these are funded and making sure that we get compliance with alternative public transport. And really, the reason for asking the question today is simply, as everybody knows, the government's failed to meet money under COVID-19 bus operator grants. It's going to run over a cliff if we're not careful by the end of January. So can we be confident that we're going to have the alternative facilities provided? And I appreciate the money we've got as part of the CAS, but where I'm very, very concerned is the general bus services we rely on, now funded by the DFT. Can we be confident? And what are we really doing to make sure we maintain those services with the city's MPs and with the Secretary of State and with Wecker, I suppose, and Dan Norris?
Yeah, thanks, David. So DfT has awarded the region over £540 million of funding over the next 5 years for sustainable transport improvements. This is in addition to the funding available through the Infrastructure Fund and other funding pots such as the Bus Improvement Plan and the Active Travel Plan. We will always seek more funding as the long-term underinvestment in traffic across the region needs to be remedied with consistent high levels of funding. We continue to press forward with our plans for mass transit in the region and will seek further funding from the DfT for our ambitious plans. There is a fund of £2 million for bus and coach engine retrofit, and we're currently working with operators that responded to an earlier expression of interest. There is also additional funding in the CAS project for bus and coach vehicle replacements, which could rise to £1.3 million. This will be available to all operators that operate within the zone and meet the criteria. Do you have any supplementaries on that?
I think all I ask is, can we have the conversation with Stagecoach? Because I'll be honest, I've spoken to the Transport Board and Alex Perry, and we just want to make sure that conversation is happening. And I put that point over to our Transport Executive member there, that conversation should happen, because we need to make sure that fleet is compliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. And Dom, I'm sure you can confirm that. Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, thank you. The next question is from Sarah Toolberg. Welcome to the meeting, Sarah. If you're here, please ask your question.
Hi, I don't know if this is working. Yeah, it is. Good. Okay. So I'm here today representing the Bishopston and St Andrews Traffic and Parking Group, and we're wedged between 3 RPZs adjacent to the CAS, which creates a high demand for free on-street parking, so much so that building contractors in London now know St Andrews as the place you can park for free. We've got ubiquitous obstruction of pavement over drop curbs on street corners, and given the popularity of additional traffic and parking management measures that were recorded in your survey conducted in 2019-2020, what intervention is planned, requesting officers to prepare in order to return our pavements back to pedestrians and ensure that there's equality of access and mobility to the area's many vulnerable road users? My own father-in-law can't get to the shops because he can't get across a drop curve and he can't access half the pavements in the area.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I mean, pavement parking is like a perennial problem, isn't it, across every city in the country, I think. The modelling for the CAS doesn't
not every
suggest...
city. Some have legislated.
Okay, so sorry. So in terms of the CAS, there's no sort of expectation that it will add more parking into Bishopston and St Andrews. So I think, you know, the options are that we could double yellow line a lot of those places, or try and get the police around to deal with pavement parking, but it's a very difficult issue. We have been speaking to government about this, and they have published a half response, but it doesn't really give us the legislative powers to be able to actually actively do anything about pavement parking. And of course, it's a very complicated problem in some areas where streets are very, very narrow, and it's very difficult to see how else anyone can park.
Well, so that's the answer. There is no answer. I mean, I think the double yellow lines thing, there are double yellow lines there already. They're not enforced at all. People can park for weeks on end over double yellows. No action taken.
I mean, thank you. So I'll take that as your supplementary question, yeah. So Don, I don't know if you want to come in on that one.
Yeah, just to say that double yellow lines are enforced. We may not have as much enforcement as you'd like, but also we are developing plans for Ashley Down Station. We hope that will give people other ways of travelling to the area apart from their car.
Well, surely all that will do is just drive more traffic to the area to park.
Thank you. You have had your supplementary question, so thank you, Sarah. So the next two supplementary questions were from David Wilcox, but I'm afraid he's not here, is he? So we'll move on. So I think that's it. Okay, yeah. So can I open it up to any? Oh, we did have questions from Caroline Graysbook as well. We'll get a written response if she's not here. Can I open it up to any cabinet members who wish to comment? Helen.
Thanks very much, Craig. And just to give you some sort of hot off the press feedback, because it was the quarterly meeting of Bristol Carers Voice this morning, and one of the CAS team came along to talk to the Carers Forum about the proposals. And just to give you a bit of the feedback, but also to ask if officers can specifically look at the feedback that the officer will bring back. Because one of the issues was about, obviously there are exemptions for people who work in care, but unpaid carers have the same issues getting their child, for example, to hospital and so on. But because they're not paid carers, they're not regarded in the same way. So I think it's an issue that we might want particularly to look at. And then it also picks up on Dave Redgwell's points about accessible buses, because some of them acknowledge that they would be able to, for example, park at Cabot Circus car park now that that's outside the zone, and get the bus to the BRI, the dental hospital, the eye hospital, children's hospital, etc. But for them, that bus has to be accessible, clearly, because if it's a child who's dependent on, or an adult for that matter, who's dependent on a wheelchair or a walking trolley, then they're still going to need that bus to be accessible. So there's a whole range of accessibility issues that they brought up, and I think with some really valuable feedback, and I think the officer thought that as well. But I would like that specifically to be looked at, because their other ask was that in the EQIA to look at the issues for carers.
Yeah, brilliant, Helen. Thanks. That's really useful feedback, actually, and I will ask officers to take that in. We will get a written version of that, presumably, that can be easily... Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. Great. Okay, anyone else wish to comment? No? Thank you all. I would like the meeting to note that an amendment to the report is necessary so that recommendations 4 and 5 read as a chief executive and omits officer. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 10, Underfall Yard Sluices. I will introduce this report and take the decision on behalf of the Mayor today. Cabinet are asked to approve up to 1.25 million for works to the sluices and to give authorisation for a funding bid to the Environment Agency for the maximum amount available from the Flood Defence Grant and Aid Fund. The proposed investment is one of several projects in and around the iconic harbour that seek to repair an ageing infrastructure. Much of the sluice infrastructure is over 100 years old, with the last major refurbishment carried out in the 1990s when the sluice paddles were replaced. Work is now needed to refurbish the sluices, which are vital to the operation of the harbour and flood defence within the city. The sluices protect the harbour and surrounding areas from flooding by controlling water levels within the harbour. If they were to fail while open, the harbour would lose water, risking a failure of the harbour walls. If they failed while closed, water levels in the harbour would rise, with limited other means to control the water level, significantly increasing the likelihood of flooding to nearby homes and businesses. This investment would seek to ensure the sluices remain fully operational in the future. Bristol's harbour is an asset that is important for the whole city, and we are committed to making it work for everyone in Bristol. The harbour has evolved over time, and we need to ensure that it meets the needs of the 21st century city and responds to the challenges and opportunities we face, including a changing climate and changes to the way we use and enjoy the harbour. Investing in the Underfall Yard sluices is long overdue. This investment is just part of our plans to make the harbour and the areas around it fit for the future. By protecting and improving this vital piece of infrastructure, we can ensure the harbour is enjoyed by residents and visitors for generations to come. The proposed repairs to the Underfall Yard sluices come alongside other investment in the harbour and riversides in Bristol. In March, we allocated 2.5 million for infrastructure and historic assets around the floating harbour and New Cut. This includes investment in 11 of the highest priority assets in need of investment due to their importance to the city's strategic transport network. Cabinet may be aware of the work starting on Gel Ferry Bridge. An outline business case for the Bristol Haven flood strategy is being prepared, a vital part of protecting Bristol from flooding for the 21st century. Works will include replacing the ageing lock gates at either end of the floating harbour upstream at Neffham Lock and at Entrance Lock in Cumberland Basin, and will rely on the Underfall Yard sluices being fully operational as a key part of Bristol's flood resilience. We have received one public forum question from Councillor Tom Hathaway, but I believe he's not available to attend, so he'll get a written response. So I'll just open it up to Cabinet members. Any Cabinet members want to comment? Nicola?
Thanks, Craig. I'm obviously pretty supportive of this proposal coming through Cabinet today. I think it just really highlights the work we did on the River Avon flood risk strategy 18 months ago, and actually what this looks like in practice, which is a series of incremental interventions to actually support the city through the changes that we will see. But for me, it particularly highlights one of the debates that was rumbling around when we did the flood risk strategy, which was a suggestion from some quarters that this could be managed purely naturally. And when we talk about what rivers do in cities, that of course we want to increase capacity upstream, and of course we want to find natural ways of managing floodwaters. But we have an old harbour and we have a strategically important harbour. And so for me, this just really highlights that kind of reality check about what the flood risk strategy does in practice, you know, what it actually means. And so I'm really supportive of this coming, and I just hope everyone gives it a read and kind of just understands that responsibility. And this is kind of the real end of that flood risk strategy in practice. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. Anyone else wish to comment? No? Okay. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 11, Temple Island update. I will introduce this report and take the decision on behalf of the Mayor today. This paper asks Cabinet for approval to fund enabling works on Temple Island. These enabling works are crucial for the redevelopment of Temple Island and the wider regeneration of Temple Quarter that it will bring about. To remind Cabinet of the scale of what we're hoping to deliver through the regeneration of Temple Quarter, over 10,000 new homes, 22,000 new jobs, a 1.6 billion per annum uplift to Bristol's economy, new commercial, leisure and employment space. These enabling works alone will deliver 270 gross annual new jobs and 16 million of net gross value add to the West of England economy. Work is already underway on a series of works including groundwater remediation, repairs to the river walls and improvements to the Bath Road access road. By approving this capital funding, we can ensure there is no interruption in the progress of these works while we await the outcome of the joint committee meeting on Friday, where we anticipate grant funding for the enabling works will be ratified. In terms of public forum, we've received one statement and two public forum questions on this item. The statement is from David Redgewell, who's representing Rail Future Sevenside. David, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, we welcome everything going on at Temple Meads. We note that the Metro Mayor and the board put it through the committee the other day, and obviously it went through with the money for the Eastern Entrance, and there was also some money allocated, as you say, for further expansion of the work on Temple Island. But it is a massive regeneration project for the Southwest. Still need to make sure that station's fit for purpose. We still have no shops. We still have poor public transport bus interchanges. And I know it's been one of the biggest pieces of work that the Bristol Transport Board's been doing, and we continue to work on it as well. But we really got to get that station fit for purpose. I was there for the special train to Severn Beach on Sunday with Don, and it's still very much work in progress. And I don't think we can let the DFT or the Secretary of State off the hook on making sure Temple Meads is the interchange for South West England. So I welcome the housing, certainly welcome the conference centre and the hotel, and also welcome the works down towards the Neffan River. And I can't believe for 1 minute that the Metro Mayor won't push this through on Friday afternoon in this building. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. You've also got the first question.
Yeah, I think my question there really is just making the point again about making sure, because the Metro Mayor's not got a pot of gold over at Temple Meads in his offices, we just need to make the case to Grant Shapps and to make the case to the Secretary of State and to make the case in the way we need to use Western Gateway Partnership, the Transport Board. It is a regional station. It's got to be fit for purpose. The regeneration land is as big as the area around King's Cross, St Pancras, as Malcolm Parson says from Network Rail, and we've really got to make sure we're never going to fund this ourselves as a city and a city region. So it's really making that case to national government and to Grant Shapps in particular and Michael Gove. That's through WECA. And hopefully WECA's going to get bigger with North Somerset, but also through the regional institutions, the Transport Board, and through Western Gateway Partnership. So really that's what I'm saying, and I think that's what the Transport Board's saying, but that station is still not fit for purpose, and it's certainly not a gateway to the city region at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. I think we're probably doing all of those things, I think. In terms of a kind of quick update on what's happening, so the Temple Quarter Strategic Board met last week, and the Eastern Entrance work will start in summer next year. We're working with partners on improvements to the Northern Entrance with a new concourse, ticket hall and retail, as well as planning a southern gateway to the station with a transport hub, including cycle parking, taxi drop-off and a car park. You'll be aware of the £24 million roof refurbishment work already underway, and I know you celebrated the timetable changes this weekend. We intend for Temple Meads to be a world-class public transport hub, including an upgraded train station and transport interchange, which is better integrated into the city, putting sustainable travel at the heart of Temple Quarter. Have you got a supplementary question?
He spent a lot of money setting it up. I'm sorry, going to be a bit critical here, and getting lots of offers. And I don't mean WECA by this, to the Chief Executive of Bristol. I mean the Western Gateway Partnership. But I'm yet to see the bids from the Western Gateway Partnership that really are producing the money we need. So can we just look at the Western Gateway Partnership and make sure it's actually putting in bids? Because that's how the Northern Powerhouse and Northern Powerhouse Rail have managed to achieve money. And I'd also say the southern tracks to the station towards the southwest and the rest of the region we connect to, it's just 2 tracks. So we need to make sure that we pick that up. We're never going to fund that with Dan Norris, however much he may wish to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. I mean, Western Gateway at the moment is just building that kind of evidence base for us to be able to do that, but that is all happening, if that's reassuring to you. Thank you. So then we've now got 2 questions. I think it's from Councillor Martin Fodor. Martin, do you want to ask your first question?
Yes, yeah, thanks very much. Well, the first one draws attention to the phenomenal scale of the risk and contingency allowance that's been identified for this, about 1/3 of the cost of the whole project for Temple Island. And it's an awful lot more than we would normally expect, more than the industry standard. So my first question is asking, why so much money is needed and being allocated to this?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I mean, firstly, that in future it will be split into 2 lines, so the risk and contingency will be, so you'll be able to see those things separately. But obviously, the real concern at the moment is construction market inflation over the past 6 months. So there's just a real concern that whatever budget we put forward won't be enough at the rate that we're going. So that's is the professional opinion of the officers.
Okay, could I sort of park that one, come to the second question, which is, we all know in this authority, our occupancy levels went down. Our management told all the councillors how amazed they were that all these teams could work from home effectively, which they hadn't thought they could do. Our own office accommodation is being scaled back as part of a way of finding income, and yet we're underwriting this sort of this 40-year tenancy. Has it been re-evaluated that that's the right thing to do now?
So we have retained CBRE to advise on the design costs, the market values, rents and sustainability of office space at Temple Island. The mechanism for triggering the settlement on final lease terms is only brought in once planning permission is obtained and other preconditions are satisfied in roughly 18 months' time. Together with other measures in the legal structure, it gives us ample time to reflect the status of the office market as we see it evolve and change, thereby ensuring our position is properly protected.
Okay, well, I mean, my first supplementary is to say, I mean, it was a choice of this authority to go with a single partner, not a tendering process, not one that would be a commercial bid, but a single partner for this development. And yet we've got this deal, which you're saying is pending the planning permission, and we've got this amount of risk and contingency now needed. Shouldn't this be reconsidered?
Well, actually, this allows us more flexibility in a sense, because a tendered process would require us to have stuck with whatever we tendered a year and a half ago.
Sorry, I think you misunderstood that. We would have accepted tenders. Someone would have made that bid. They would be committed to that bid, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but sorry. Yeah,
The redevelopment is being carried out by a single preferred partner, not as a result of an open tender of what people offered us. So we've made this deal, we're now underwriting it, and we might have to reevaluate it. We wouldn't have been in this situation if we hadn't made such a one-to-one deal with a preferred partner.
But in this context, we get the opportunity to reevaluate it, don't we? In another context, whomever was building a building might have built themselves something that ends up empty. So in this way, we get to reevaluate that and go through a process that we wouldn't have been able to do had we been stuck with whatever we tendered a year ago.
And the office could have been turned into flats with no planning permission under permitted development rights, presumably. Yeah. Okay. Thank you anyway.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And does any other cabinet members want to comment? Yeah, Nicola. Yeah.
Other than to say yes, to Dave's point about WECA, I'm hopeful about what will happen this week, but I'd just also like to promote the need to get the flood risk money for St Philip's, because actually this is a 20-year programme. Temple Island is a big stimulus, as is the new station at Temple Meads, but we must remember that we also need to protect the city and that part of the city from flood risk. It's a bit of a floody day today. So I just wanted to, as ever, get that on the record, that actually is one of the biggest constraints outside of Temple Island itself, is managing that site over the next 20 years. Thank you.
It's nice weather to be discussing flooding anyway, so it feels appropriate. Do any other cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendation as set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on screen. Okay, agenda item 12, disposal of land we can make. I will ask Councillor Tom Renard to introduce this report. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. So this paper seeks Cabinet's approval to dispose of up to 14 plots of land to We Can Make for delivery of further homes following the pilot of 2 homes in Knoll West. We Can Make provide affordable homes in low-density estates on land that was formerly part of the back gardens of council homes. This allows us to bring forward different types of homes, especially smaller homes, for people that want to downsize or for smaller households, which otherwise are in short supply for people who want to remain in their local area. The homes are built using prefabricated panels that are manufactured in Knoll West, so this initiative which will not only deliver innovative housing, but also create employment opportunities for local people in the area. The paper also sets out a framework for our decision making over how microsites are selected, the process by which homes delivered through the scheme are allocated, and the review process we'll put in place following this initial pilot before we roll out the scheme any further. I just want to take a moment to pay tribute to We Can Make and Knoll West Media Centre for working both with us and the local community to get this innovative pilot off the ground. And I would encourage anyone who wants to find out more about the project and the opportunities it unlocks for people to take a look at the What Does Home Mean For You video on Bristol City Council's YouTube channel, which was showcased at the State of the City recently. In that video, you can hear from Tony, who is helping to build a home for her and her daughter in the back garden of her mum's house. And I wanted to give her the last words by quoting what she said. I never thought the council could find me a home in a space like this. I'm really excited to paint and decorate my daughter's room with her. I'm excited for the space and we'll be able to have people around. There's more independence, more freedom and more time to spend with my daughter. Thank you.
Yeah, very emotional. Thanks, Tom. On to public forum statements and questions. We've received one statement and question, both from Councillor Chris Jackson, but I don't think he's with us. No. Okay, can I ask any other Cabinet members who wish to comment? No? Okay, great. Well, I'll thank everyone for their comments and I'll hand back to Councillor Renard to take the decision which I support and which now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen.
It's the Tom Renard show for the next little while. So Tom, it's you again now. Agenda item 13, new private rented property licensing scheme. Can I hand it over to you to introduce the report?
Thank you. So this is something I'm quite excited about as someone that's campaigned for licensing schemes for many years, and also this covers my ward of Horfield as well among areas. The recommendation today is for Cabinet to approve 2 new licensing schemes in the electoral wards of Bedminster, Bridgington and Horfield to improve housing standards and the unsatisfactory management of private rented accommodation in those areas. We know that the private rented sector in Bristol has grown significantly over the last 20 years, going from about 12.2% to 30.3%, which means it's about 60,000 houses that are now in the private rented sector within Bristol. And anecdotal data suggests that this is likely to continue to increase for the time being. We've had something called mandatory licensing in place for many years, which targets larger houses and multiple occupation, which are five or more people sharing, forming 2 or more households. And the local authority has the discretion to designate additional licensing schemes for smaller HMOs or selective licensing for all other types of private rented property for a 5-year period where certain criteria have been met. Robust evidence has been obtained to confirm that these areas meet the necessary conditions for declaration as property licensing schemes. This is the 4th such licence scheme to be introduced in Bristol. The previous schemes have been extremely successful in improving the standards and management practices, and the aim of this project will be to deliver similar improvements in these 3 wards. Property licensing is a proactive tool available to local authority, which enables officers to inspect most private rented properties in the selected areas to check conditions and take appropriate action where housing and management standards are not met. There have been some reports that licensing has reduced available accommodation and increased the challenges faced by tenants wanting to rent in shared housing. Investigations have shown that the number of HMOs overall in licensing areas have increased whilst licensing has been in place, so we would dispute this claim. In the most recent scheme in central Bristol, initially there was a small decrease in the number of HMOs operating. However, further investigation at the midway point through the scheme identified that the numbers of HMOs operating in these wards had increased and are at a similar level to before the licence scheme commenced. Current market conditions and the shortage of available accommodation has resulted in HMOs continuing to grow. I'm recommending this report is approved by Cabinet today, as I believe that the scheme will have a significant impact on improving housing conditions and management practices, provide better protections for renters, and will not have a detrimental impact on the renter sector in these 3 wards. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. So we've got 2 public forum questions on this item from Councillor Philippa Hume, who's with us. Can I ask you to ask your first question?
Yeah, thanks so much. First of all, as you well know, Tom, we've got a large number of HMOs in our ward in Horfield, and lots of them are unregulated because they have a small number of rooms. So obviously, very supportive of this. My question is, could you let me know of the timetable for introducing the additional landlord licensing scheme? Thank you.
So, assuming the proposal is approved by Cabinet today, the additional and selective licence schemes will come into force 3 months after the designation and last for a period of 5 years. So the proposed start date is the 6th of April 2022.
Can you use your microphone? Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry. Obviously, the main benefit of this is driving up standards for renters. Are there any other benefits to other members of the community that you found out about? Thanks.
So there are a number of key benefits, and it provides significant support and reassurance for private tenants. Would be the place I'd start, but it also provides benefits for the council as well. For private tenants, it means we'll have the resources to respond to concerns raised about the quality of their accommodation to ensure they meet our licensing condition standards. Inspections can be undertaken proactively rather than having the resources to respond following a complaint, which provides a level of reassurance to tenants and reduces the potential for retaliatory evictions as well. Landlords who fail to licence their properties are unable to use the discretionary powers under Section 21 of the Housing Act 1998 to end an assured short-hold tenancy. In addition, tenants can apply for a rent repayment order for the period that the property was unlicensed, which is up to 12 months rent that could be claimed in that situation. Overall, private renters will see improvements to property conditions and confidence that the property they live in meets certain legal standards. And for us, it provides information on the location of rented properties in the licensing area, enables us to inspect licensable properties and enforce licensing standards. Just a couple more. So licensing also provides the opportunity to engage with private landlords operating in the area and to assist them ensuring their properties meet those minimum standards and they understand their obligations. And landlords also have the opportunity to join an improved organisation that is signed up to the Rest of England rental standard and have confidence that legal standards are being met and properties are safe for tenants, and also the application of antisocial behaviour clause. So, it really starts to rebalance between landlords and tenants some of the power dynamics that there are, because at the moment power is very heavily weighted in favour of landlords, and this should give renters just that little bit more protection within what we're able to do as a council.
Thanks, Tom. Do you have any supplementary questions?
Yeah, just a quick supplementary. I'm just guessing as well that perhaps another benefit might be benefit to other residents in that we'll have better data on how many HMOs there are, and that will be really helpful in terms of planning decisions as well.
Yes, that's right. So in terms of the HMO that looks at HMOs within an area, by having these licensing schemes means we know actually how many HMOs officially are in the area, which means that SPD can be better, substantial planning document can be better applied, because at the moment we're only able to rely on the mandatory licensing data. So when we talk about Horfield, it says there's about 2% of the ward is HMOs. We know that to be total nonsense, and it's much higher. But for a planning document, we can't rely on sort of the building research establishment data, for example.
Thanks, Tom. Can I open it up to any other Cabinet members who wish to comment? Nicola?
Just to endorse this and say it was one of the first things that came in 2016 when I became a councillor, and it has had a massive impact in St George Central Ward, and has really felt the benefits of that for our citizens who live in my ward and are trying to get on with their lives and know that there's that additional kind of safeguard and protection. So yeah, I'm really pleased to see this and bring it on. Really well done.
Thanks, Nicola. Any other Cabinet members to comment? No? Okay, thank you all for your comments. I'll hand back to Councillor Renard to take the decision, which I support and will now be displayed on the screen.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thanks, Tom. And we're back to you again. Agenda item 14, block contracts for temporary accommodation. I ask you to introduce the report.
Thank you. It's been a busy few weeks. So a safe and stable home is the most important need and the strongest intervention we can make to improve somebody's life. And quite simply, it's our biggest responsibility. And it feels even more poignant as we approach Christmas to think that there are 970 households currently in temporary accommodation. That's almost 1,000 families in a temporary home. The impact of the pandemic has resulted in massively increased levels of homelessness in Bristol, with almost a 50% increase on pre-pandemic numbers. Most of our emergency temporary accommodation has been provided through our emergency accommodation framework and procured on a nightly spot purchase basis directly from a list of accredited commissioned suppliers. Nightly spot prices are set by suppliers through a pricing matrix, and the framework commenced in early 2016, and since that time we've spent £45 million on temporary accommodation. This report sets out the block contracts approach for temporary accommodation, which we hope will increase the supply available. Procuring additional block contract accommodation is also a recommendation from our strategic partner review of temporary accommodation, because it will help to lower contract value and reduce the spend. The only way to truly end homelessness is to provide enough affordable housing, but temporary accommodation allows us to house people at risk of homelessness while we work towards our long-term goals. And the recommendation in this report will allow us to support people both in the short term and the long term while trying to get our cost and spend down on this area.
Great, thanks, Tom. In terms of public forum statements and questions, we did have one from Councillor Steve Pearce, but I know that he's not able to attend today. He'll get a written response. Do any other Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, well then I'll hand back to you, Tom, to take the decision which I support.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen.
Thank you. We're back to you again. Housing, IT, transformation and procurement.
This should be the last of mine today. This paper seeks Cabinet's approval to implement an IT transformation programme for housing and to reprocure applications that are critical to the managing of our housing system. This transformation programme and reprocurement is necessary as many of the applications on which our housing and landlord services team depend on are coming to the end of their life, including our private housing case management system. Papers seeking approval to procure new IT contracts are rarely among the sexiest papers we'll be bringing forward to these meetings, but these systems are pivotal for us to effectively manage the 28,562 homes that sit within our portfolio as a council. By extending the contracts for our current management systems and giving approval for the work on the outline business case, Cabinet will be helping to ensure that officers and crucially residents will have effective digital tools at their disposal to ensure the smooth running of our housing system.
I really like IT procurement contracts papers, actually, Tom, I'll have you know. But yeah, no, I take the point. We haven't had any public forum statements or questions on this. Does anyone want to comment from Cabinet? No? No? Okay, well then I'll hand it back to you, Tom, to take the decision which I support.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen.
It's usually me bringing these papers, so it's good. It's nice to see someone else. Next, agenda item 16, Family Hub Transformation Fund bid. Can I ask Councillor Asher Craig to introduce the report? Asher, can you move your microphone a bit closer? We can't hear you for it, I didn't mean.
Is that better?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay, sorry. The DFE recently announced a £10 million Family Hub Transformation Fund and is awarding up to £1 million to at least 12 local authorities to be spent between April 2022 and April 2024. This report seeks approval to submit a bid by Bristol City Council up to £1 million to that fund from the Family Hub Transformation Fund to allow us to transition into a Family Hub model. It is a time-distinct project to establish these hubs, and there are no ongoing costs anticipated. The money from the DFE is not for direct service provision. It's more about enabling the transition from the current model into a family hub model of working, with a commitment to opening family hubs by April 2024. Bristol has already been working with partners in this space for the last 12 months to prepare for this transition, so we were kind of ahead of the game. So the opportunity for us to bid for the funding to help us realise our ambition is really welcome. Family hubs, for those of you who don't know what they do, they're a non-stigmatising entry point into a wide range of integrated services where families with children from conception to 19 and 25 for those with special educational needs can access those services. The bid is currently being written, but if we are successful, it will be used to support a project officer post, development of a web virtual offer, branding and development of workforce training. The service landscape for families is really confusing. We've got a range of disparate services working with families right across our system, with families often very much unaware of what other work is actually taking place, even in their local communities. This results in families having to repeat their story and getting frustrated with the system, leading to disengagement. As I said before, family hubs are already firmly on our local agenda. They're written into our emerging new corporate strategy and the belonging strategy, which was written with children, parents and families, as well as key stakeholders. So basically, we are seeking approval for us to bid for that funding and to spend that money should we be successful. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Asher. Can I offer it up? We haven't had any public forum on this one. Can I offer it up to any cabinet members to comment? No? Okay, well, I'll hand back to you then, Asher, to take the decision, which I fully support and will be now displayed on screen. I think you say I approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Sorry. I approve the recommendations as set out in this report. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just taking it off the top of my head now, so sorry if I've got it wrong. Right, agenda item 17, intensive positive behaviour support. Can I ask Councillor Helen Holland to introduce this one?
Thanks very much, Craig, and it's a great pleasure to bring this report because it's a lot of money that's coming into the City Council through the CCG, over £1 million for the project across the BNSSG, but the City Council is the lead partner. It's about a person-centred, evidence-based framework for supporting people with learning disabilities and autism with behaviour that is particularly challenging, and that often obviously causes us to find very expensive provision for those people, and we commission some of those services from out of the area. So the aims of the pilot, which hopefully will improve the services and bring some savings, is to prevent placement breakdown when an individual's behaviour becomes exceptionally challenging, and to reduce that reliance on costly out-of-area placements, and to avoid excessively expensive placement costs. It builds on a project that's happened with children's services, and as you know, we're trying very much to improve the transition services between children's services and adult services for young people as they come through, and to also make sure as much of that as possible is within Bristol, because if you want to integrate people with learning disabilities and challenging behaviour back into the city, then actually being at an out-of-area place up in Derbyshire or somewhere, no disrespect to Derbyshire, I love it, but that is not going to help in terms of that person coming and living it back in our city. We've got a fabulous example in Don's patch at Sea Mills of the work that we're doing there on the first home to bring those people who've been in out-of-area placements back into Bristol, and I think that this kind of builds on those lessons that we've learnt. So it's an excellent step forward and a good report.
Brilliant, thanks, Helen. We did have 2 public forum questions on this one from Councillor Tim Y, but I understand he's not with us today. Can I hand it over to any cabinet members who wish to comment? Asher, do you want to comment? Oh, you had your hand half up. Yeah. No? Okay, well, have everyone, and I'll hand back to Councillor Holland to take the decision, which I would support.
And we have got some very full answers for Tim Y, and he'll have those. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations. Thank you.
And are displayed on the screen. Great, thanks. Thank you. Agenda item 18, parking permits and tariff review, October 2021, resident parking schemes and permit parking areas. I will ask Councillor Donald Alexander to introduce this report.
Thank you, Craig. This paper seeks Cabinet's approval to approve an inflationary increase of all residents' parking scheme permit and pay and display charges, and to approve a pricing structure to bring the pricing for the Eastern St Phillips RPS into line with the other schemes over a period of 2 years. The prices for permits and for pay and display parking in RPS areas has not been reviewed since 2015, and as such, Cabinet is asked to consider an uplift in line with inflation. Due to the Eastern and St Phillips RPS being introduced later than other RPSs, we recognise that bringing the cost of this scheme into line with other schemes represents a significantly higher uplift in prices for residents and businesses. To that end, we propose to spread these cost increases over 2 tariff cycles for Eastern and St Phillips. The report also asks Cabinet to note that we will bring forward a review of RPS pricing and regulations before March 2022. The operational regulations and pricing for multiple vehicles hasn't been reviewed and is now out of step with our drive towards modal shift. As a result, the review will consider qualifications for permits, visitors, and number of vehicles per household.
Thanks, Dawn. We, in terms of public forum statements and questions, we did have we received statements from Kate and Richard Clark. I don't think either of them are here. There's no one in the public gallery, so I'll assume they're not here.
I've noted their points, by the way,
thanks.
and I'm following them up.
Great, thanks, Dawn. Do any other Cabinet members wish to comment?
No comments?
No comments, so
Okay.
I'll hand back to you
Thank
to take
you.
the decision which I support.
In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. I did fail to mention that we did receive 2 questions from Councillor Christine Townsend, but she's not here either, so she'll get a full written response to those 2. Agenda item 19, Send Information Advice and Support Service Contract Extension. Can I ask Councillor Asher Craig to introduce the report?
Thanks. This report is seeking to extend the current Send Information Advice and Support Service contract for a further 12 months until the 31st of March 2023 at a cost of £140,000. And we're bringing this report today because in invoking the extension, it will take the total value of the contract over £500,000. The Council has a legislative duty under the Children and Families Act 2014 to provide impartial, confidential and accessible information, advice and support to parents of children with special educational needs and or disability, as well as to young people over the age of 16 up to the age of 25. This duty is currently being met by the Send Information and Advice Service contract that is held by the organisation called Send Anew. As you can see from the report, the satisfaction rate of the service provider is extremely high, exceeding 95% on all of the kind of key targets. And so therefore, we are asking that the contract, which was awarded in 2019 and expires at the end of March 2022, is extended for a further 12 months to enable us to undertake formal consultation on proposals of where we want to take the service next. Thanks.
Brilliant, thanks, Asher. We did have one public forum statement from Martin Fodor, I think. Is that right? He was here, but I think he's gone, so thank you. Can I offer it up to any Cabinet members who wish to comment? No? In that case, I'll hand back to you, Asher, to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on screen.
And in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item 20, Arts Council England extension funding for Bristol City Council Museums 2022 to 2023. I will introduce this report. This paper seeks Cabinet's approval to accept an additional funding grant from Arts Council England to invest in the Bristol Museum Service and the South West Museum Development Sector Support Service. The funding we receive through being one of the Arts Council England's national portfolio organisation enables our museums to deliver engagement programmes for our residents. This includes our successful schools programme, which prior to the pandemic reached 50,000 students annually. It's also supported the delivery of Art Shed, a referral programme supporting people with their mental health. Arts Council England are extending this funding for an additional year on account of the pandemic and to help organisations transition to their new Let's Create strategy. The funding will be used to change how the museum service works, to make the service more outcome-led and community-focused, and develop more collective knowledge. It also allows us to make welcome investment into our workforce. I'd like to take this opportunity to formally thank all those members of staff who have navigated the changes and pressures over the past 2 years and have brought with them considerable dedication and commitment. Our museums do so much to enrich life in our city and attract world-class exhibitions in Bristol. I highly recommend Grayson's Art Club exhibition at BMAG at the moment, as well as supporting local creatives and providing enriching education opportunities for students and visitors alike. I am pleased this funding will help us carry on this work, and I hope residents and visitors will continue to enjoy and support Bristol's museums in 2022. We haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this one. Any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, good. In terms of the decision to be made today, I will approve of the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on screen. Isn't that on the cultural investment programme, the next item? I think that's on the next item. That's right. Yeah. So now on to agenda item 2021, agenda item 21, Cultural Investment Programme 2023 to 2027, and I will introduce this item. This paper opens the second round of Bristol's Cultural Investment Programme by inviting artists and cultural organisations and community projects where arts, events and cultural activities are their focus to apply to the Cultural Investment Programme, Originator, Imagination or Openness grant streams. This £2.5 million investment recognises the importance of the cultural and creative industries in the city and supports their recovery, as well as driving the aims and goals of our corporate strategy, cultural strategy and culture and creative industries service. The report explains that the culture sector has taken a huge hit during the pandemic in terms of economic output. Although the city is on a path to recovery, the aftershocks of COVID-19 still significantly affect the cultural sector, resulting in an increased need for support. So in terms of public forum statements and questions, we have received one public forum statement and question from Councillor Tessa Fitzjohn. Welcome, Tessa. Please read your statement. You have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So this is my statement. As you recognise, the UK museum sector is a very important asset in the success of the UK arts and creative industries that contribute 2.8 billion a year to the Treasury via taxation and generate a further 23 billion a year and over 400,000 jobs. So financially and educationally, it's an amazing resource. I used to work for Arts Council England, and I've also worked as a public art producer for museums in Bristol. So I feel I'm in a good position to look at this application and with regard to the new Let's Create 10-year strategy. Let's Create is a major shift for Arts Council England, and we'll be looking particularly at the MPO portfolio.
Just to say you've got 10 seconds left. Just to say you've got 10 seconds left.
Oh, God. Oh, I didn't realise it was 1 minute. Well, basically, just to say, I think we should be strengthening our partnerships with the arts, moving outside the sector. I think that's what Arts Council England's going to be looking at. And I think Bristol's well placed to model new ways of working, but it's definitely not going to be same old on the portfolio. So it was a kind of bit of advice, really. Shall I go on to my...
Yeah, thank you. Well, just to comment, I agree with you. I mean, I've read that strategy too, and it is a pretty big departure from where the Arts Council were previously, and if we don't heed that, then there's a risk. Obviously, we don't want... You know, we'll work with the Arts Council. We do have our own ambitions too, so it's just about marrying those two together and not letting them completely lead us whilst also accepting
absolutely
that we work with them.
And I think, I don't know if I can go on, but I actually feel like we have to kind of present our offer in a different way as a city. I think that's one element. I think the other element is that we need to look at our boards for all the organisations, because they're going to be asking for board scrutiny much tougher. And there's a whole backstory around the Arnolfini, which you probably know. That's a good model. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
My wife worked there for many years, so I definitely know the issues there. So then you had a question, so over to you.
Okay, so this is my... It's basically, as you mentioned before, your corporate strategy talks about Bristol's cultural and creative economy, how the cultural and creative sectors have been absolutely decimated by COVID, particularly the visual arts sector. I'm a visual arts specialist, that's my area, and it's the least regulated of all the arts sectors, which actually presents quite a problem for it. So I'd like to propose that we re-look at how we funded the public arts. So back in about 2016, any development, so I'm moving away from the paper, but any development of over 10 units had a public art plan attached to it. That meant that probably about £3,000 was spent on developing the plans. It also presented other problems for planners. I'm well aware of that, but I think we can overcome that. So I'd like to ask the council to really rethink that process, because it was fantastic for the visual arts in the city. It built up a legacy of world-class arts and lots of other benefits, and I'm probably over my minute now.
Sorry, you don't have a minute for the question, so don't worry. On that point, I mean, we do have, so the local plan does have, within it, BCS 21, which does say that a development is expected to enable the delivery of permanent or temporary public art, and that's any development of more than 10 houses or 1,000 metres squared of non-residential floor space. So that is there. So it is there currently. But it hasn't been used for a long time. Yeah, it got dropped when Aldo Rinaldi left the council for various strategic reasons. Good. Okay, I'm going to lose my... Sorry, Chris, we could talk about it another time. Can I ask you, I mean, I'm on the local plan working group, so I shall be pushing for this because I think it's a real benefit, and I'd like to suggest that we reinstate it. And that's my final question. So it hasn't been unreinstated. Admittedly, since Aldo's left, it's probably not as driven as perhaps it could be. Nicola, did you want to come in? I can see you gesticulating.
Yeah, sorry, just to... For the record, I'm sorry, Tessa, but you're incorrect. You've already covered it, but it does exist. It is used, and it's embraced by the city. And if you want to speak to the city design team, you're more than welcome to do that.
You have to. Sorry, I've got a hearing loss, and I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, Tessa. Just to say, for the record, what you said isn't correct. It is used. And it still is planning policy, and there's every plan to retain it as a piece of planning policy. And if you speak to your group, actually, I had a meeting with Carla Denier, actually, and my city, at the time, what was the city design team that I was leading, to explore this in more detail. So your group is aware of the fact this is still policy and is still used. So I'm not following your commentary exactly, but I welcome your intervention about the local plan working group and keep campaigning for it, because we want to keep it. So you're right to identify that's the place to have that conversation.
Okay, can I just come back to you? I mean, I hate to bring up Bedminster Green again, but Bedminster Green was 5 developers. They only thought about a public art plan when I actually suggested it to them, and I said, where is it? And nobody knew what I was talking about. Now it's coming into being with the Arts and Events team, which I'm really thrilled about, but it wasn't on the table, and that's one of the major developments happening in Bristol. So I'd just like to flag that up, all right?
Okay, thank you. I don't want to go back and forth all day. Nicola, do you want to come back on that specific point? No? Okay, good. All right, well, thank you for your questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
I've just come out of PSP, so I'm going to go, but...
Okay, no problem, thank you. Yeah. Does anyone else want to comment on this agenda item? No? Okay, great, thank you. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, and which will now be displayed on screen. Agenda item 22, I'm afraid you've got about 5 reports from me next, so apologies everyone. First one, Council Tax Base 2022-23. I will introduce this one. This report recommends for approval by Cabinet and full Council the Council Tax Base for the next financial year. It sets out the number of properties that are forecast to pay Council Tax next year after taking into account those who aren't required to pay. This includes households that are exempt or receive discounts to their Council Tax bills under national rules such as students and single occupiers. We are continuing to help almost 36,000 low-income households through our local council tax reduction scheme. As a result of the pandemic for 2022-23, we are increasing estimated in-year losses to 3% as a one-off to reflect the estimated amount of debt that won't be collected once all recovery measures have been taken, with the anticipation of a tapered recovery moving forward. Due to a forecast healthy growth in the number of properties, this has a minimal effect of reducing the tax base by 0.02% compared with 2021-22. We haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this item. Can I ask any Cabinet members if they want to comment? No? Thank you. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations I set out in the report and which will now be displayed on screen. Okay, next. Agenda item 23, Collection Fund Surplus Deficit 2021-22. The Council has a statutory requirement to maintain a separate collection fund for accounting for the transactions in relation to council tax and business rates and sets out the way in which these are distributed to the general fund and the preceptors. The pandemic continues to have a significant impact on our citizens and businesses. As previously mentioned, we support many who are unable to pay through the council tax reduction scheme, and it's a good sign for the local economy that claims for this support are now starting to level off. Many businesses too have continued to receive support from the government in business rate relief. However, this year we have seen the number of missed instalments significantly increase, both for council tax and business rates. For this reason, it is necessary to set aside additional provision to cover the possibility of being unable to collect some of these arrears, particularly the older debt. At this stage, this is considered a one-off increase which will be further reviewed at the end of the year. The deficit on business rates has been further impacted by the cost of the council of successful appeals decided by the Valuation Office. Changes in rateable values and in the business rates payable can be backdated to 2017, with the full cost of all years borne primarily by the council once the appeal is decided. This year, the amount previously set aside to provide for appeals has already been exceeded and requires a further contribution from business rate income. These increases in provisions are the primary reason for the deficit on the collection fund for 2021-22, the council share of which is 6.9 million for council tax and 4 million for business rates. We haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? In which case I'll take the decision. In terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Agenda item 24 is me again, 2021-22, period 7 finance report. This report provides an update on the Council's forecast financial performance for 2021-22, the ongoing financial impact of the COVID pandemic on the Council, the other financial pressures and proposals to mitigate these. The report also contains submission and proposals for acceptance of new funding bids that have not been previously approved. The total COVID-related pressure forecasted as at period 7 is 48.4 million. Although the overall amount of COVID funding received by the Council exceeds the totality of the COVID pressures identified to date, much of this funding is ring-fenced to be used for specific aims associated with controlling and managing the current and future outbreaks. It is possible that some of this funding could be allocated to mitigate some of the financial pressures. However, the report sets out what the case would be if the residual funding was needed to be allocated for new COVID outbreak costs, leaving a residual 46.6 million to be applied in the general fund and a net outturn position of 1.8 million overspend. It is important to note that these forecasts were formulated before details of the new Omicron variant had emerged. Apart from the COVID financial pressures, the main cost pressures are in the People Directorate, where adult social care services are impacted by market volatility and the availability of care staff, and in education, where there are pressures on home-to-school transport for children with special educational needs and disabilities. These costs are potentially mitigated by underspends in other service areas across the Council, and a broadly break-even position is forecasted. Negotiations regarding the Council's 2021-22 pay award have still not concluded, and this could further impact on the Council's financial position. There is a significant ongoing financial risk to the Council arising from large increases in energy costs. The savings position is included in the forecast above and is currently indicating that 5.47 million of the savings that have been agreed by the Council are at risk of non-delivery, of which 4 million is within People Directorate. We continue to identify ways to mitigate financial pressures to avoid overspends at the end of the financial year. The report also sets out the financial position for the HRA, DSG, public health and our capital budget. Within the DSG, there is particularly significant risk to the Council where the in-year deficit on the DSG is forecast to be 14.8 million, which when added to the brought forward deficit balance of 10 million give a total deficit at year end of 24.8 million. The main area of overspend continues to be the expenditure on placement costs for children with additional and special educational needs within the high needs block, which is forecasting an in-year overspend of 15.5 million. This report asks Cabinet for supplementary budget approval for the allocation of the mandatory element of the latest tranche of the Infection Control Fund of 1.8 million to providers and the 0.8 million discretionary element, which will be subject to a future report. Full details of revenue and capital spending forecast, new funding bids and awards are provided in the appendices to the report. We've not had any public forum questions or statements on this one. Do any Cabinet members wish to comment? No. In terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on the screen. Next, me again, this is a slightly happier one, Household Support Fund. The DWP has allocated £4 million to Bristol under the Household Support Fund. This will enable the council to provide a package of targeted financial support for those in need over the winter period, with 50% of the money given to support vulnerable households with children. A large proportion of the money, £2.85 million, will be allocated to around 28,000 households and individuals of working age on housing benefit and/or council tax reduction scheme, with eligible residents receiving a one-off £100 supermarket voucher to spend on food and household goods. Free school meal vouchers will also be made available to parents of children of school age and early years during the February 22 half term, and this has already taken place in the October 2021 half term. In addition, other targeted support will be available, including help for Syrian and Afghan refugees and asylum seekers living in the city with the help of the Red Cross. This solution is a continuation of providing food poverty assistance to children, as well as the support to several thousand working age households over the winter, assisting recipients with food poverty, but also indirectly with gas and electricity poverty by enabling them to free up some of their household expenditure to meet these increased costs. I'm really pleased to bring this report to Cabinet today. Does anyone have any Cabinet members want to comment?
No, I just wanted to really support it. It is actually a really good report, and the way in which the money has been disaggregated and the spend really recognises the need, the growing need that there is amongst certain families and communities. So yeah, welcome this funding to be able to support these group of families.
Yeah, thanks, Asher. Anyone else want to comment? No? Well, in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which now be displayed on screen. I'm very pleased about it too. Next up, less exciting, agenda item 26, end-user computer devices. This paper asks Cabinet for approval to tender for a new end-user computer device contract. EUC devices cover a range of council-owned IT equipment which officers depend on to carry out work on behalf of our citizens. These include workstations, desktop PCs, laptops and tablet devices. Many officers across the council have been provided with updated devices running Windows 10. This paper allows us to continue to deploy new devices for our staff. I'd just like to draw Cabinet's attention to a typing error in the recommendations on the published paper. The paper should in fact be asking Cabinet to approve the procurement of a compliant end-user contract rather than a complaint end-user contract, which it does. The correct wording will of course be displayed on the published decision notice if this paper is approved. We did have 2 public forum questions on this one from Councillor Heather Mack, but she's not here, so we'll get our answers in writing. Can I ask if any Cabinet members wish to comment? No? Computer devices? No? Oh. In which case, in terms of the decisions to be made today, I approve the recommendations as set out in the report, which will now be displayed on screen. Agenda item 27. The discretionary award element of the DHSC Adult Social Care Infection Control and Testing Fund Round 3 and the Workforce Recruitment and Retention Fund. I think it's our snappiest title yet.
Might be the longest.
Yeah, over to you.
I mean, you've already mentioned the additional monies that came in your earlier report, and this is a report about the 2 elements of that: the infection control money and the workforce retention and recruitment fund. I mean, obviously it helps, but for most of it, we've just been the passporter out to the providers and making sure that those providers are treating their staff fairly if they've got to go and have vaccinations or self-isolate and so on. Just on an update about the issues which are well known, but I don't think it's kind of out there enough about the workforce pressures at the moment. But yesterday we held a special city leaders meeting about winter pressures and had everybody there, including the bus company, the colleges, the providers, and it was a really, really good meeting, but it really spelt out the pressures that the health partners and social care partners are under, and in many ways this money doesn't really touch the sides because of the size of that problem, but there's some really exciting ideas of things that we can work on together with some of those partners, so we'll be taking those ideas forward. But the money helps, but it doesn't meet all the needs.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to build a kind of increasing noise around it, but people still don't realise, I don't think. We did, the core city finance leads do meet regularly, and we've discussed it there. There was also, well, in fact, Marvin raised it yesterday with Keir Starmer and Lisa Nandy at their roundtable thing that they held yesterday. So every council on the call was raising exactly the same problem. I think it's going to become a very big issue. We haven't received any public forum statements or questions on this. Any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay. Helen, I'll hand it back to you to take the decision which I support and will now be displayed on screen.
You might need to go through. So in terms of the decision to be made today, I approve the recommendations which will now be shown on the screen.
Lovely. Agenda item 28, Corporate Risk Management Report, Quarter 2. This report provides details on the current strategic risk to the Council achieving its strategic aims and objectives. Effective risk management is key to helping us deliver our goals as a Council. There are currently 2 critical threat risks, which are the failure to deliver enough affordable homes to meet the city's needs and safeguarding vulnerable children, and 2 risks which have deteriorated during the last quarter relating to adult social care provider failure and the delivery of our transport capital programme. We take all these risks extremely seriously and are taking action to reduce the risk that they pose. There remains one critical external risk relating to the continued impact of COVID-19, which also impacts on the risk level of other risks across the Council. The report summarises the progress and the actions taken in managing and reducing these risks to a tolerable level. Full detail on all the risks is provided within the report, and I'm sure Cabinet are aware of those already. Again, we've not received any public forum on this one. Do any Cabinet members want to comment? No? Okay, in this case, Cabinet notes the recommendations as set out in the report and which are now displayed on screen. Agenda item 29, heat decarbonisation at the Wellsman building. Can I ask Councillor Nicola Beach to introduce the report?
Thank you, Craig. Hopefully everybody has read the paper and you can see this is one of a number of papers that we've brought before now and will continue to bring as we look at once our heating systems get to their end of life, our opportunity to invest in them in a better, more decarbonised way. It's just one step in terms of our commitment as an administration to confront the challenges we have in terms of the decarbonisation of our estate, and it's money well spent. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if there's any questions or any other comments from Cabinet members.
Any Cabinet members want to comment? We've had no public forum on this one. No? Okay, great. Nicola, I'll hand back to you to take the decision which I support.
In terms of the decision to be taken today, I support the recommendation, approve the recommendation on screen.
Lovely. Great. So I think we're now at the last item. Yes, so agenda item 30, final memorandum of understanding, October 2021 to March 2022 for the integrated care system of Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloucestershire. It's got to be the second longest title today. Helen, over to you.
And obviously we left the best till last, so I've got a speech prepared that's about 20 minutes long, if that's all right on this. Actually, I think it's only a couple of months since we looked at the interim MOU, or the draft MOU. It has now been signed off, but I do want to stress that this only sees us through till next April when the formal new arrangements will be in place. But we have been working both with the CCG and our partners in the other 2 local authorities to make sure that this gives us the freedoms to be able to make sure that we're putting forward the priorities of our own corporate strategy in the One City Plan, and that we're able to enact those through the new arrangements, of which, I mean, I've spoken about this a lot, but I think for us, the locality, the integrated care partnerships at the 3 locality levels is a really interesting and innovative place, and we carry on pushing that and working to make sure that the overarching body takes on the priorities of those locality areas.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I mean, ICS are one of those kind of exciting but kind of nervously excited things, aren't they? And it could go either way if we're not careful. So thank you for everything you're doing on it. We've not received any public forum statements or questions on it. Does anyone from Cabinet want to comment? Asher?
Yeah, it has been a lot. This has been a long time coming. I remember when we came in 2019 and we were going through the first iteration of the changes within the Healthier Together BNSSG and how local authorities were left out in the cold, I would say. And I think over the last 2-3 years, we've really demonstrated across the system how well we can actually work together and where there are areas of synergy. And so the led by Helen, and I have to commend Helen on the work that she has done to really get us to this place. And I think, the fact that there was hardly any resistance, no resistance at all, both externally and internally. I think it's been a labour of love, but we've got there. There's still a way to go, but with the new structures that are going to be in place as well, it's really important that we actually, what I want to see is how the voice and the needs of the communities. It's really about how we change the system and the approach that we take instead of on high. It's more bottom-up approach, I think. But well done. We've got there.
Great, thanks, Asher. Helen, I don't think you need to approve this one, actually, because I think it's just for noting. So unless any other cabinet members wish to
come back.
Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Oh, please do.
No, I mean, I appreciate very much what Asher said, because this morning it was a useful wake-up call, but at the Carers Forum meeting, somebody said, we've seen these NHS reorganisations before, and trying to convince them that this isn't just an NHS reorganisation, but that's down to us. You know, the integration word in the government legislation is largely with us. Local authorities are the largest partners with which the NHS will integrate. And for me, we mustn't ever forget that Bristol has got the highest level of health inequality out of the BNSSG area, and that's where we can really make that difference through our placemaking role. So, yeah.
Yeah,
so
great.
I haven't got to remember those awkward words.
No, you haven't, no, thankfully. So just to thank everyone for their comments. Thank you, Helen, for this. Cabinet notes and recommendations are set out in the report and which will now be displayed on the screen. That is the end of today's Cabinet meeting. Thank you, everyone, for attending. The next date, the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 18th of January, day before my birthday, at 4 p.m. at City Hall. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year.